Oh hey, welcome back. Have you ever wondered if, despite the huge number of aftermarket offset bridges available now, whether its full potential to truly transform your offset guitar has really been explored? We all know by now that different offset bridges will impart a different tonal character to your instrument. But what if there was a way for one bridge to produce two different tonal profiles? And could such a bridge cause a long-term mastery user, for example, offset meme lord Che Choi of Lounging Guitars, to become so excited about this new design that they change their ways after a decade of mastery use and name it their new favourite offset bridge? Well, today we're checking out the super cool Belrok Bridge. Before we get into it, I've got some really exciting news to share with you all. For the first time in practically 2 years, my band has its first show coming up in just a couple of weeks' time, on the 22nd of March. Pure Adult are coming to East London from New York City, and we're really excited and proud to be supporting them alongside Cassell's. I first became aware of Pure Adult back in 2019 because Jeremy Snyder is one of the lighting techs for Idols. But Pure Adult are a really sick, super arty, post-punk noise rock band in their own right, and I've been following them ever since they dropped their first EP back in 2019. If you're in or around London on the 22nd of March and you fancy a really fun night of offset guitars and fuzz pedals, then come down to the Victoria in Dalston. It's going to be a really cool, really fun night of music and guitars. And as usual, please like this video if you enjoy this content. Please subscribe for the channel for bi-weekly offset guitar content. Please let me know your thoughts on this bridge in the comment section below, and please share it with a friend who loves offset guitars and might be looking for a new bridge. While Belrok might be a relatively new name in the world of offset bridges, they have a very established reputation under the name Bunting Guitars. They make really beautiful, really unique offset guitars and Gretsch-inspired guitars that are played by some of your favourite players and carried by some of the most prestigious music shops in the USA. Specifically, the Belrok Bridge is a collaboration between Bunting Guitars and the metal workshop next door to them. After 18 months of research and development, the Belrok Bridge was finally born, and this partnership definitely seems to have been a match made in heaven. The design of the Belrok Bridge is really interesting. I've made a number of videos now talking about how your hardware affects your guitar's tone, and whenever I review or demo a bridge, that's always one of the things I'm really keen to try and articulate and also to demonstrate. Fundamentally, the Belrok Bridge was designed around two key pillars. Firstly, the sound of the guitar, and secondly, the stability of the bridge. The guys at Bunting and Belrok Guitars really liked the stability that the Mastery bridge provides, but they noted that the Mastery and other offset bridges which use brass saddles add more overtones and a zingy sound to an offset guitar, which slightly changes its voice from a traditional offset guitar to something a little bit different. One of the primary design goals then was to create a bridge that captures and enhances the traditional sound of an offset guitar whilst providing the stability and reliability of a Mastery. After much experimentation, Belrok decided that cold rolled steel provided the most authentic offset guitar tone. Cold rolled steel is extremely popular with Telecaster players, but the Belrok Bridge is actually the only offset bridge offering this material. However, during the extensive testing of various different bridge materials, the guys at Belrok tried some pretty unusual things. We all know guitar players are obsessed with Rosewood, right? We all got so salty and sad when Fender and Squier stopped using Rosewood and introduced Pofero and Indian Laurel. So if guitar players are so desperate to have Rosewood underneath their frets, why not put it under the bridge saddles too? It sounds pretty wacky, but this is exactly what Belrok have done. And you know what? It's actually really practical and really cool. The Belrok Bridge features a removable rosewood veneer that sits between the bridge base and the bridge saddles. And this gives you two very distinct tonal profiles to choose from. Similar to the Fender Custom Shop RSD, the Thorn Brass Knuckle 2 and the Tuffset bridge, the Belrok has completely eliminated the use of springs and tiny grub screws and uses a locking mechanism to firmly secure the bridge saddles to the base. In order to adjust the intonation, you just need to slightly loosen these three locking screws on the top of the bridge, and that will then enable you to either move the whole saddle back and forth or to angle the saddle to get the correct intonation for each string. Then, once you're done, simply lock the saddles firmly into place again, and they are never going to rattle or move or buzz or fall out of place at all. The saddles come in a fixed radius of your choice between 7¼ inches, which I have here, or 9½ inches. And the string grooves for each string have been specifically and carefully optimized to maximize the tone, resonance, stability, and performance for each individual string. So it's really important that you make sure you put the bridge on the right way around. And lastly, this bridge comes with optional bridge thimbles for an upcharge, kind of like the Mastery, if you want to make sure that the bridge posts are fitted as snugly and securely as possible in the thimbles. And just to note, this bridge was actually pointed out to me by a viewer of the channel, so I have to say a massive thank you to this viewer for pointing this bridge out to me and bringing it to my attention. One of the things that has really impressed me about the Belrok Bridge is how much the guys at Belrok really care about this bridge. Once I'd received the Belrok Bridge, Yaniv at Belrok organised a video call with me to make sure that I understood every aspect of the bridge design and to answer any questions that I might have about the bridge as well. He also wanted to make sure that I would be honest and transparent in my review and include any negatives that I found as well. And he was really keen to know how the bridge could be improved. Yaniv told me that his favourite guitar is one particular old Jazzmaster, and from the website it looks like it might be a 65 or a 66. He told me that that is basically the perfect guitar for him, but a lot of the time he finds many offsets don't feel or sound exactly quite right. Both bunting guitars and the Belrok Bridge are designed to address this, and they both take the traditional offset guitar and try to enhance it and take it to the next level. One of the things that I asked, and this is a question that I've seen people asking online as well, is whether the Belrok Bridge was inspired by the Fender RSD, because there is a touch of similarity aesthetically between the two. Yaniv says that although he thinks the RSD is quite a good looking bridge, that wasn't the source of inspiration behind the Belrok, especially given that the RSD uses brass saddles, and that's one of the things that he is particularly not so keen on in an offset bridge design. He told me that his inspiration had actually come from various different vintage 1950s bridge designs, particularly the designs of telly bridges and vintage wraparound bridges. If you check out the bunting guitar models that Yaniv made prior to establishing the Belrok Bridge, you can see that nearly all of those bridges either use the Mastery or the True Arc bridge. I think you can definitely see how the Belrok Bridge is a product of all of these influences. There is definitely a kind of Gretschy undercurrent to the aesthetic of the bridge. And you can see the influence of the Mastery and those wraparound bridges in the design of the saddles as well. And the use of cold rolled steel and rosewood in the design also belie the Gretsch and Telecaster influences as well. Now, normally in my videos I have a section on first impressions where I discuss what my impression was when I first took the bridge out of the box, as well as my first thoughts when I first put the bridge onto the guitar. However, I'm going to have to split this up into two different first impressions. A first impressions with the rosewood veneer, and then the first impressions without the rosewood veneer. So first of all, I put the Belrok Bridge on my Jazzmaster with the rosewood veneer. My very first thoughts when I got the Belrok Bridge is, wow, this thing is a work of art. When you get it out of the box, it really does seem like some kind of Art Deco masterpiece, and I really like the aesthetic of the bridge. Both the Art Deco looks, but also how the functionality of the bridge is incorporated into that look as well. When I'd installed the bridge on my Jazzmaster, my first impressions of the acoustic sound of the instrument was that it had made the guitar really full and warm and so clear. It really produces a tone that is so fat but has so much definition and clarity to the sound as well. In addition to that, I could also immediately perceive that the Belrok Bridge had produced an increase in the amount of sustain that the guitar had as well. I also noted that the design was pretty comfortable as well, and combined with the comfort and the sound and the aesthetic, I found this bridge super inspiring. My Jazzmaster was the guitar that I played the least out of all my guitars, and yet suddenly when I put the Belrok Bridge on, I just couldn't put the guitar down. I was constantly playing it and picking it up, and I immediately came up with a new song idea which I got tracked and written really quickly, because it just brought the guitar alive and completely changed my relationship with that guitar. I don't think you can really ask for more out of a bridge than that. When I removed the rosewood veneer and put it on this guitar, the first thing I noticed was the little Belrok logo that is kind of etched onto the bridge base here, and I really like that. I think that looks really nice. Secondly, I noticed that with the Rosewood veneer removed, the bridge has a very low profile. And so on this guitar with a 1-inch pitchback on the neck, you have quite a lot of bridge height there. And so this will be a great option for anti-shimmers because it gives you so much room to lower the bridge for adjustment. When I took the Tuffset bridge off this guitar and replaced it with the Belrok, my first impressions of the tone were that it was very full and warm, but super punchy and articulate as well. It also imparted a tonal character that was very smooth in the high end as well. It wasn't at all ice picky or spiky or grating at all, and there wasn't any sense of a really extended high end as well. It was a really nice, pleasing, smooth high. Each note you play on this bridge really rings out like a bell, and it feels like each note really has a lot of weight behind it as well. I think that's because the sound is just so full and articulate and punchy, but it's a really pleasing sound and a pleasing feel as well. And overall it's just really bright, but without any harshness or zinginess or unwanted overtones at all. It's a really nice sound that it provides to your guitar. Okay, so all of this is all very well and good, but what is this bridge actually like to use in practice? And what is my opinion of it now that the honeymoon phase has worn off? I've been using this bridge now for about 3 months, both for playing at home, just messing around, for making videos, for recording song ideas, as well as using it in a live band context as well. Does it live up to its ambitions of being a super stable bridge? Well, the first positive is that it successfully remedies many of the traditional issues facing regular offset bridges. Because there are no springs or tiny grub screws and the saddles are locked firmly in place, there is nothing to buzz or rattle around or to create any kind of unwanted noise or resonance. There is no perceived sinking or falling of the bridge even under really heavy playing, and I didn't find any issues with the strings popping out of the saddle grooves at all either, even under the hardest playing I could possibly manage. And I also didn't have any issues of the strings skipping or making unwanted movement or noises across the saddle groove either. The strings really are super stable and held in place really well with this design. And secondly, therefore, this bridge really does feel super stable and reliable. Che from Lounging Guitars says it actually feels even more stable than his beloved Mastery. Thirdly, on the topic of the feel of the bridge, this is a very comfortable bridge, and I think moving forwards this is going to be up there as one of the most comfortable offset bridges on the market. The saddles are a lovely rounded shape, and there's no intonation screws sticking up out of the saddles to stick in the palm of your hand, which is really nice. It's also worth noting that the locking screws on the bridge are also below the surface of the bridge saddle as well, so you can't feel those against your hand either. There is one small caveat to this, and we'll come to that further on in the video. Fourthly, I was so impressed with the level of care that Belrok put into every aspect of the bridge, and how much Yaniv was really concerned with me, making sure that I understood exactly how the bridge worked, answering any questions I had, and making sure that the bridge is represented accurately, including any negatives or drawbacks of the bridge as well. Partly so that people really understand what the bridge is like, but also so that he knows how to improve the bridge as well, or maybe tweak anything that could be improved. And I really like that. I'm so impressed by companies or creative people who are open to taking constructive feedback and looking to make their design the best it can possibly be, rather than deciding in private that it's the best it can be already and not being open to any kind of criticism. I really respect that in an artisan or in a manufacturer. The fifth positive of the Belrok Bridge really does have to be the tone of this bridge. I know we just covered that already in my first impressions, but still 3 months on, I'm really enjoying the tone that this bridge imparts to my guitar. On this Jag, it gives a really lovely full sound that's very punchy and very articulate. I'm so impressed by the cold rolled steel and the way that it really smooths out the high end without introducing any harshness at all. And I believe that's one of the reasons that it's loved so much by telly players, because it gives you all the punch and twang and presence that you need without any harshness at all. And I really like that. It's got a really nice voice for this guitar without the rosewood veneer. On my Jazzmaster, this guitar naturally has a very zingy voice. It's a guitar that has lots of overtones to it, and with other bridges I often find that they enhance that harsh character of the acoustic voice of my Jazzmaster. Whereas with the rosewood veneer on the bridge, it really warmed up those harsh overtones and really kind of muted them as well. It took away all of that unpleasant acoustic character that this guitar can often have, and just made it feel so responsive, so dynamic, so lively, and just gave it a really nice, full, warm and articulate tone that I haven't found on any other bridge. The incorporation of the rosewood veneer really does give you an incredibly unique sound to your guitar, and it really suits my Jazzmaster incredibly well. On the subject of compatibility with my Jazzmaster, one of the problems that I have with it is that it uses gold and chrome hardware. If you take a close look at it, you'll notice that all the bits of hardware on that guitar are a combination of gold and chrome. From the vibrato to the vibrato arm to the jack and the switch, all of it is a combination of gold and chrome. And I find it really hard to find hardware that matches that vibe or that aesthetic. One of the things about the look of the Belrok Bridge that I really like is the fact that with the rosewood veneer, it looks really at home and fits the aesthetic of a gold hardware guitar really nicely. If you take a look at this picture I'm going to throw up on the screen, I think the rosewood and the chrome or steel of the Belrok Bridge look perfectly at home and look really nice on this guitar with gold hardware. But also just in general, I think it looks really cool even without the rosewood veneer on. It kind of reminds me aesthetically of the first offset bridge I was ever sent and the first offset bridge I ever reviewed, which is sadly no longer in production, the caster bridge. It's got a really cool kind of almost lightning bolt look to it that I just think looks really interesting. It looks really nice and cool, and even though it's not a very traditional looking offset bridge, it doesn't look space age like the Mastery does. It really does have a kind of vintage 1950s Gretschy kind of design to it that I think looks really nice and really at home on Fender offset guitars. So I think that's really cool, and is another example of someone producing something that will look really at home on a vintage instrument or a modern instrument, and I just really like how original this is in terms of an aesthetic for an offset bridge. The next positive is to do with the price. Now, if you watch my last video on offset bridges, which was outlining what all the different problems with offset bridges are, why there are so many different offset bridges, and how we can categorize them, I went through the different price ranges of offset guitar bridges. If you were paying attention, you would have noticed that the price category with the least offset bridges in it was the £150 to £200 price bracket. In this category, you only have the Avallon, the KMS Jam bridge, and now the Belrok bridge. There really is a gap in this kind of price range in the market. There's quite a few 4 or 5 offset bridges that cost over £200. There is quite a number of bridges that cost £100 to £150. And again, there's quite a number that cost less than £100. But for some reason, this little window of £150 to £200 or £199, there is very few offset bridges in this category. And it's one of the areas in which I was hoping to see more offset bridges fill. And so I'm really pleased to see that the Belrok fits into that category. Yaniv was actually concerned that I wasn't going to like the Belrok because he noted that I always comment on how good value for money less expensive offset bridges are. And while that is true, and while I do have a soft spot for bridges that provide an affordable alternative to people who can't afford a mastery, that's not to say that I don't value and appreciate and like more expensive bridges too. And I think this bridge is not only sitting in a really great place in the market where there's not a lot of competition at that price, the uniqueness of this bridge, the tone it provides, the comfort, the overall package, I think is excellent value. It's also the cheapest bridge that uses a fully locking mechanism for the saddles like this. The other bridges that I mentioned, the Custom Shop RSD, the Thorn Brass Knuckle 2 and the Tuffset bridge are all well over the £200 price range bracket. This is the only bridge under £200 that offers this fully locking saddle system. So again, if you're interested in this kind of feature that is offered by those bridges, definitely check out the Belrok bridge. The next positive is that even though the Belrok is designed with its own thimbles in mind, I found this to work absolutely fine, no problems at all with both import thimbles and with US spec thimbles. Penultimately, I really like all the thought and work that has gone into the Belrok bridge to make it a unique bridge. Having the 2 different tonal profiles, that is such a cool idea and it works so effectively. And all the thought that's gone into the bridge to make it traditional sounding and 1950s looking, and yet take in 1950s guitars and traditional offset sound to the next level, I think that absolutely pays off, and I think it is an excellent bridge in that regard. And lastly, the Belrok bridge comes in a really nice little tin. This is a nice little packaging feature, but also it means that you have a really nice little tin that you can put on your pedal board. If I make another board that's full of space echoes and Russian big muffs, this will be the tin that goes on there. So I think I lost count there of how many positives that is, but there are a lot of positives with the Belrok. Okay, so there were many positive things there about the Belrok Bridge, but is there any room for improvement? Are there any parts or features of the Belrok Bridge that I didn't like quite so much? Well, the first thing that I noticed, and this is where we are calling back to where we discussed comfort before, is that this middle section of the bridge here, the internal edge of the two saddles, is actually a little bit sharp. And when you first play the bridge, if you're just doing kind of traditional palm muting on the lower strings, you actually don't notice it at all. You can't feel it, you just feel the lovely rounded nature of the edge of the saddle here. However, if you start palm muting on the A and D strings or on the D and G strings, that's when you can really feel the sharp edge of the saddle here in the middle. Doing that kind of playing, I can really feel the sharp edge of the saddles there. I fed this back to Yaniv at Belrok, and he was really grateful for that feedback. He said he'd missed that and kind of no one had raised that before. And so moving forwards, if you order a Belrok bridge from now on, those two edges there on the corner of each saddle is going to be nicely rounded over and perfectly silky smooth. So while that's a negative and it was room for improvement, that should have been addressed already. And so if you order a Belrok, you're going to have a really nice smooth edge there on those middle corners of the saddles. Secondly, if you watch my Tuffset review using this guitar, you will know that I had to take the mute off my guitar due to the amount of pitchback required to have the mute installed with that bridge. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that the mute still hasn't gone back on. And that's because this rocking bridge, just like any other rocking bridge, will have legs that are too wide to be compatible with the Fender mute. That is to be expected with a non-rocking bridge due to the wider legs that are needed to take up the whole space within the bridge thimbles, but it's something to bear in mind if you're using a Bass 6 or a Jag. It's not that hard to modify your Fender mute either to accommodate a bridge with wider legs, and once I've finally finished reviewing every single offset bridge, that's definitely something that I'm going to be doing to my Fender mute. The next thing I would say, and this isn't really a negative, is that with the Rosewood veneer installed on the bridge base, I was quite concerned that I didn't want to over tighten the locking screws on the top of the bridge because I didn't want to crack the wood underneath. This meant that the first time I set the intonation, I didn't clamp the locking screws down hard enough, and the intonation was then, if I applied pressure, still able to move. Now really I shouldn't be concerned about this because the locking screws aren't putting pressure directly onto the veneer, they're putting pressure onto the saddle. On the outer locking screws here on the saddle, the screw is completely in contact with the inner rim of this part of the saddle, and in the middle there is a little lug on the bottom of the middle section of each of the saddles that this middle locking pin is in contact with. And so there isn't a focused point of contact between any of the locking mechanisms and the Rosewood veneer, and so it shouldn't crack at all, but I'm just cautious of that kind of thing, and I was a little bit concerned that I might crack it. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's a concern. Really, that's a me problem, but that was just something that I noticed. I think that's something that I'm going to get used to as I continue to use this bridge and continue to experiment with the veneer on different guitars. And really I can't score negatively against the bridge for that reason. It's just something to bear in mind. But also just remember that the pressure isn't being put onto a focus point on the veneer. It is being spread across the saddles, and you should be fine there if you feel the same way. The next thing to be aware of if you do elect to go for the upgrade to include additional thimbles with your Belrok bridge, those thimbles are USA spec only. That means they have an outer diameter of 9.5 millimeters, and if you have a Squier or a Mexican or a Japanese Fender, those Belrok thimbles are not going to fit into your guitar without a little bit of modification, because the bridge thimble roots in those guitars are 9 millimeters. Again, really this isn't a particularly big negative. I used the Belrok bridge with input thimbles and I found it to work absolutely fine, but if you want it to work as optimally as it possibly can and you want to get those Belrok bushings and you have an input guitar, then you will need to ever so slightly increase the hole in your guitar to accommodate those new bushings. And lastly, when I took this guitar with the Belrok Bridge on it to a 3-hour band practice, and I really laid into the guitar using the full force of my right hand to smash into the strings as hard as I possibly could, I didn't perceive any movement of the bridge. I didn't notice that the bridge had sunk at all. But when I got home and I took some measurements, I noticed that on the bass side, the bridge had sunk by 0.1 millimeters, and on the treble side, it had sunk by 0.3 millimeters. Now, these changes are almost completely imperceptible. I certainly didn't notice it while I was playing, and I was going to conclude that the bridge hadn't sunk at all, but I thought I'd better just double check. And really, any offset bridge that doesn't have some sort of locking mechanism in place to lock the bridge legs to make sure that they can't move or rattle or sink at all is going to have this problem to some degree. Now, it's worth noting here that I play guitar in a particularly heavy-handed way. When I'm playing live with my band, I hit the guitar so hard and I'm so active and lively on stage, running and moving around as much as I possibly can, that by the time we've got about 2/3 of the way through our set, I feel like I'm physically going to be sick because I'm so exhausted because of how much I've exerted myself, throwing myself around the stage for the last 20 or 25 minutes. If you don't play in this manner, and if you're not smashing the living daylights out of your guitar with your picking hand, then this probably isn't going to be an issue for you with the Belrok Bridge. The caliber of players that play Yaniv's guitars, in terms of their skill level and the kind of music they play, they're probably not laying into their guitars as aggressively as I do with my guitars. I'm just a punk guitar player trying to imitate Johnny Marr. So I think for the majority of people who get a Belrok Bridge, you're probably not going to have any issues of the bridge sinking like I did. However, if you play your guitar like King Kong or Godzilla, then you may want to put some Loctite on the legs just to make sure that they don't sink at all. So given that 2 of those are really specific to me not doing the locking mechanism up tight enough with the Rosewood veneer on, and me playing my guitar like an absolute maniac, and given that 1 of those is common to all non-rocking bridges, that non-rocking bridges have bridge legs that are too wide to use with a Fender mute, given that the 4th has already been addressed by the guys at Belrok, the sharp inner edge here on the saddle, and that the 5th really isn't an issue because this works absolutely fine with import thimbles, there is really not a whole lot of negative stuff to say about the Belrok Bridge. However, if I'm being super critical and really granular, those are the only 5 negative things I can possibly find to say about the Belrok Bridge. Okay, so with all of that being said, do I recommend the Belrok Bridge? Well, in case it wasn't clear yet, I really like and highly recommend the Belrok Bridge. This bridge completely transformed my Jazzmaster from a guitar that I hardly ever played to one that I simply could not put down. It feels incredibly comfortable, and the newer versions with the rounded middle edge of the saddle will be one of the most comfortable bridges that money can buy. The tone is really pleasing and musical. It's warm and full, but it's never bloated or flubby or uneven in any regard. A slightly scooped mid-range with a full and punchy low end and a smooth but articulate high end, and with clarity throughout the whole frequency response, is my idea of tonal heaven. And this is it. There's no honky mids or ice pick highs at all, and it really does beautifully enhance the natural voice of your guitar. Given that you can really tailor the sound of your guitar by choosing between one of the two tonal profiles that the Belrok bridge has, either by using or removing the Rosewood veneer from the bridge, really sets this bridge apart from everything else on the market. And it's not just a gimmick, it really works incredibly well. Also, if you're a little bit handy, you may also be able to make your own veneers to go on the Belrok bridge out of alternative materials, different woods, different metals, even different plastics or bone, things like that, and that could be a really cool and interesting thing to do. Unfortunately, it's slightly beyond the skill set that I possess. And while there were a couple of drawbacks that I found with the bridge, they were really incredibly minor and none of them represent a serious flaw or a fundamental problem with the bridge at all. At the moment, out of the 10 or 11 offset bridges that I've tried, this is firmly in the top 3. So if you're looking for a really comfortable, great sounding offset bridge with fully locking saddles, you have the Thornbrass Knuckle 2, the Tuffset, the Fender RSD and the Belrok to choose from. With the Belrok being the cheapest by about $50 based on the price of the unit shipped to the UK, and with its super pleasing tonal profiles and really comfortable design, the Belrok is definitely worth your attention. If you're really set on having a rocking bridge and that's really important to you, or if you really want a bridge with a non-fixed radius, i.e. an adjustable radius, and that is a really important factor for you as well, then the Belrok bridge may not be the correct bridge for you. But if you're open to either a rocking or a non-rocking bridge, and you like or even prefer having a fixed saddle radius on the bridge, then the Belrok is an excellent choice. Cool, so I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful and interesting. And if you didn't know about the Belrok bridge already, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts and what you make of it based on this review. I really like the Belrok bridge, and now I don't really know which guitar I want to put it back on, whether I'm going to keep it on my Sparkle Jag or whether I'm going to put the veneer back on and put it on my Jazzmaster. So maybe down the line I'll have to buy another. Cool. Alright, well that's everything for today's video. Until next time, take it easy, look after yourselves, and we'll see each other again soon.